class, and welcome to today's mini lesson. Today we're going to be working on an ELA standard. The ELA standard in question is connecting things within different text. The number of the standard is R1C, and what the standard means is that we're going to compare a fictional place, time, or possibly character with that of something with actual content and realistic subject matter that goes with it. So that basically means we're comparing a non-fictional place, time, or character and contrasting and comparing it with something that actually happened. So an easy one for us to do for an example would be, it's not an easy subject matter to teach, but it is easy because most of you have known this already. It is the Holocaust. The Holocaust, if you do not know, was the mass killing of over 6 million Jews, Gypsies, and other types of people. This is easy to make a comparison between fiction and nonfiction, as there has been a few fiction books written about it. A very popular fiction book that has been written about this as of late would be The Boy in Striped Pajamas. And the nonfiction books that we will be covering will be, I'm going to choose two, as one focuses on before the person gets put into the concentration camp, and that would be the Diary of Anne Frank. And then the other one focuses on during the concentration camp, which would be Night by Elie Wiesels. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. That is German, I do believe. So that is quite hard to pronounce. So we're going to discuss them. Let's start with The Boy in Striped Pajamas. The Boy in Striped Pajamas is about a young boy, I would say about 12, and his family. They get moved to one of the concentration camps, I believe in Germany, in the middle of the night, as his dad is in the army, one of the concentration camp army people for Hitler, and he demanded that they move to this concentration camp overnight. So they packed up all their belongings and traveled, of course, to this concentration camp so his father could do his job of controlling the Jews in the camp. He was one of the wardens that worked in there, and their house just so happened to be right next door to the concentration camp, within walking distance of the fence. And of course, this boy is the only 12-year-old boy in the area, I would presume, and he doesn't want to spend time with his other siblings because they're younger. So he goes out looking for something to do, and he takes a walk, and he notices the fence, and he meets this poor boy that he does not realize at the time is a Jew that is in the concentration camp on the other side of the fence. And he asks him why he wears pajamas, how old he is, and if they would like to be friends. So they start this sort of friendship over time. Occasionally, he'll sneak him food or things that he can sneak by, that they can sneak through the fence with no one noticing. And they talk and they become friends, and he invites him over to dinner and says they've had dinner was Hitler before, and the boy says, well, I can't leave this fence, and we're stuck in pajamas all day, and this is where we live. And the boy said that maybe his father could get them out if the boy actually knew what it was like inside. So the boy eventually goes inside the concentration camp with the other boy, and I'm not going to spoil the ending for you all, but it is quite the sad ending. So we're going to work with that as our fictional context, and then we're going to go into the non-fictional context. So let's start with Anne Frank. The Diary of Anne Frank is about a young Jewish girl while they hide in various places. I do believe they move at least twice. And they're hiding from the Nazi generals and army that is coming to take all of the Jews to put them into concentration camps. And they hide upstairs in this really deserted room and keep it deserted where they have places to hide. If they do get an air raid bomb or someone comes to the door, they all hide. And she keeps a diary of her daily life, the raid bombs, what happened when you got sick, what happened when the Nazi soldiers did come to the door, how they had to hide, how they rationed food, how they were only allowed to listen to the radio at certain times, how there wasn't much to read or do, which is why she started her diary. This book also has quite the sad ending to it, and her father actually published her diaries later. That had been the one thing that he had saved is her diary entries. So that is a fictional context, but you can compare that to that of the boy in striped pajamas. She ends up, I believe in the concentration camp at one point in her entries. So this boy here is already in the concentration camp, so he never got to be a real boy, a real kid, and have fun and play with his friends. And if he had did before this, it had been interrupted by these concentration camps, and now all they had to do was work. So Anne never really got to be a young girl at that point. She was fighting for her life and to not be taken by the Nazis. She fought for her right to live, and she just wanted peace and for the world to go back to the way that it was before this happened. Then there's Night by Elie Wiesels. He was actually in the concentration camp. He actually had been released from the concentration camp, so he has all of these stories about how they were numbered. They went by their number that was on their wrist here or somewhere along their arm. They did not have a name anymore. They went by that code number, he said, and there was some other things, and they ate gruel. They didn't really have much food, which the boy in the striped pajamas also mentioned, that they don't really get much food. They get some type of porridge, type mush. Back in the day, they used to call it mush. It was like a porridge type consistency, and that they didn't get to bathe very often, and they had a few different sets of clothes that were pretty much the same clothes. You had a work set of clothes, and then you had like a sleep set of clothes, and that's what they wore. They were like a pajama type consistency in most places, just like the boy in striped pajamas. They also they mentioned the gas chamber at some point in the Boy in Striped Pajamas. That was real. That did happen to a lot of people, and a lot of people died via gas chamber. They also died from exhaustion, among other things like infection and some of the other ways that they had come up with to minimize the problem, as they call it. I believe it also mentions that they had lined the non-workable Jews, which meant you were too small, a female, more than likely pregnant, injured in some way, shape, or form. They weren't going to let you work, so they would stand you in a line and they would shoot these poor people. And that's also mentioned in Night. That actually did happen. They would line you up and they would shoot you, and the bodies would just sit and get covered upon bodies, so there was a constant stench of death and decay around the concentration camps. They also, I believe it's mentioned in Anne Frank, that if you had any belongings that were of value, of gold or silver or anything that you packed up to take with you to the concentration camp, more than most of these items, if they could be found, were removed from your person. So that also affected the characters because those are their personal belongings that they have lost. Also, they lose their jobs, their homes. A bunch of other things are mentioned in Night that they lost. So that is how you would compare the characters and setting and time. It was both around the same time, World War II, that had the same time frames. They had close characters with maybe not the same ideal of what was happening, but even the young children on the inside knew what was happening. It also shows that America may not have completely knew what was happening, and if they did, a lot of people ignored it, like the young boy's parents in the Boy in Striped Pajamas. So that is some of the ideas for this. Sorry, I'm checking our time. I forgot to mention that The Boy in Striped Pajamas is by John Boyan, if you would like to read that. It's a very sad story, but it is close to the truth. Another recommendation would be, of course, Anne Frank. It is a very touchingly sad story, but is a very good read if you were into non-fictional historical stories. Thank you for joining me today for our mini lesson.